Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. So the man says, let's go with it. Let's go with 5G. Is that a good idea? Let's start with you, Stephen.
I think for us, I mean, at Flow, I mean, we're taking a very measured approach to it. I think the standard is just really being defined, even though as you see it launched in the USA with Verizon, et cetera, et cetera. The reality about it is that it is real revolutionary technology. It's real fast speeds. I mean, 4 to 10 times as fast as the regular 4G speeds that people experience right now. So we know that it's going to make some real revolutionary breakthroughs in terms of application, especially for business-to-business applications. So we think that it's something that we should look at, but the reality is the consumer is going to drive it and really ask and demand it, and we know it's a direction that we'll eventually have to go in. But right now, we still have to stop and see and understand. Because
it sounds like you have some concerns.
Yeah,
what are your concerns?
We do have concerns. I think from the perspective of Jamaica is not ready yet, in the sense that in order to roll out a true 5G network right across the country, it's going to take 3 times the amount of towers that we currently see right across the country. Because one of the great things about 5G, while you have great speeds, you use very good low frequency, but with those low frequencies, what's happening is that it doesn't go as far from the antenna as possible. So you're going to need multiple antennas right across the country, literally littering the country. In New York...
Well, let me get a word from Maria. You're supposed to be helping us to prepare.
Sure.
What are we doing from that level?
So from the vantage point of the Spectrum Management Authority, the regulators who actually regulate frequency and the use of frequency, one of the things that we're going to do is have stakeholder engagement. And not only will it include persons like Stephen, the telcos, but we have to engage government agencies, health organizations in Jamaica. A number of bodies have to come together and just discuss how are we going to roll this out. Even the infrastructure, as Stephen has mentioned, building codes will have to change. So it's a myriad of different persons that are going to be involved. Academia has to be involved.
At this moment, does the government have a view? Are we moving towards 5G?
So the government's position right now, as it stands, is that we just came out of WRC, the World Radio Conference, where the world just agreed on the frequency allocations for 5G. The regs have not been written yet, so we're still waiting. A number of countries are previous, I would say, in launching, and you've seen auctions in the US, as Stephen mentioned, with Verizon. But again, we have to put the legislation in place, we have to test the market, we have to do a number of things in order to prepare for 5G.
So on the government side, it's a go.
It is a go.
What about you, Dr. Matt Norton? Is it something we should be hurraying about?
Well, I don't know that I would use hooray. It's certainly something that we should be talking about. And, you know, for us as the business school, and as you know, we had a public forum just in the last week, really beginning to address the issue. We really try to broker the dialogue and the debate around something that is policy relevant, great interest for the business community, and of course, consumer interests. As Stephen said, I think the consumer interests may drive it. Yeah. I prefer that it be the business relevance that drives it. I mean, the idea that I can download a movie in 0.5 seconds instead of 5 minutes should be really material, right? But I think one of the things that 5G offers is not just faster speeds, and Stephen, you can back me up on this, but the fact that it provides far greater density in terms of connectivity means that Internet of Things really becomes real opportunities, especially in dense business areas like take the port community, for instance, right? So that sort of provides a significant advantage over the current Wi-Fi kinds of...
All right, so we'll talk about some of those opportunities when we come back. You're watching CVM Live. Back after this break. We're discussing 5G this evening with Maurice McNaughton, Stephen Price, and Maria Myers-Hamilton. Just before the break, Maurice, you were talking about some of the opportunities that 5G will give us.
Right.
How will the world look if we have 5G? How will Jamaica look if we have that?
Well, I think there's one example that we're all familiar with, self-driving cars. One of the things that 5G brings is extremely low latency.
Very low latency.
And latency means that it's very responsive, right? And you need that for those kinds of applications where you have to have very quick response. I mean, my car, your car, you know. So the low latency, the order of magnitude increase in density for Internet of Things, and then the speed. Those are the three attributes that makes it quite different than what preceded it. So it's not just much faster, but very different kinds of applications that are possible because of those three characteristics.
Are they really probable in Jamaica?
They're very probable, and in the sense that it can replace all of these wired networks that we do have. We can have a full fixed wireless network right across the country, giving you speeds of over a gig per second, you know? So those applications are there. But as Maurice said, mission critical kind of applications are very possible. Medicine, in terms of telemedicine, in terms of persons actually performing surgery from miles away with somebody in Jamaica, those things are actually possible if we do get that, because latency is so low using 5G. It's amazing what can be done. Autonomous vehicles, and even applications in terms of business, factories, manufacturing, agriculture, you know, cannabis, all these things in terms of using IoT devices in order to make sure we do sensors, testing, soil, all those things.
But in order to do this, we're going to have antennas at everybody's door. And people are worried about the ultra-high frequencies that will come with 5G and what it could do to their health. Maria?
Yes.
What are you going to do about those concerns?
So, right now, as it stands today, the World Health Organization says all the evidence gathered to date, there is no empirical data supporting that this radio frequency or high levels of frequency or radiation gives you any type of health issues. Although in the public sphere you may have peer-to-peer reviews, and again, those are controlled discussions, but the World Health Organization says that, you know, they have nullified those claims. So again,
so people shouldn't be concerned, or they should wait a little?
Let's put it this way. Those studies are done outside of Jamaica. One of the things I'm advocating for is for us to do our own studies. So partnering with a lab, with UWI, University of the West Indies, or other tertiary institutions, collaborating, bringing equipment in, testing, and by the way, spectrum management authorities is part of the process, because we do type approvals. We also make sure that the equipment coming in is of a certain standard, IEEE and FCC compliant. With our labs now, we'll have our own first-hand data to determine is it a health hazard or not. And then the Ministry of Health, NEPA, and all those guys in our space will determine should we deploy.
Yeah, definitely.
But some people are saying we're very ambitious. We're talking about 5G, and we haven't even implemented LTE properly in this country.
Well, I beg to differ. I mean, we have 95% population coverage LTE right now.
Yes.
And both networks as both companies are pretty advanced in their LTE roads.
With what kind of uptime? Because when I travel, I get 3G.
Well,
and those things.
Well, I'd say one of the things that we have to work on as well is in order to make sure we bring 5G in, the legislative framework to support the technology. Both networks are under siege in terms of vandalism and those kind of things. So we have to put a framework in place in order to protect from those things. I think there's dialogue. As Maria said, we have to bring everybody to the table, right? We have to speak about the kind of spectrum environment that will persist, because if we want to do this and if we want to bring the technology to the unserved as well, which is one key way that we can use 5G in terms of bringing it to the areas where we couldn't have covered before, because it's just totally unprofitable to bring the technology to by wire. We can do that, you know, so we just have to bring all the players together, put the kind of regulatory framework in place in order to make sure that we make it happen.
And you see, Oliver, in this space, as I said before, in the digital world, connectivity is a birthright. Gone are the days where pockets of communities have connectivity. When you're in Kingston, if my daughter has connectivity and she takes for granted everybody in Jamaica has access to internet, but that's not the case.
It's not the case.
We need to move to that, to connect the connected for health reasons,
Will
as
5G
mentioned.
solve that problem?
Possibly, yes.
It is a quantum leap that can assist in that process.
What do you think, Maurice?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, it's all about the economics of it, right?
Correct.
There's the cost of deploying 5G, and cost is not just the financial cost, but we're talking about the environmental impact, if such exists. Yeah. But do the benefits outweigh that cost? No, 5G brings enormous benefits. Again, the idea of density, the idea that you can lay down public Wi-Fi that serves entire communities, especially dense business communities. I keep referring to the port community system because it keeps speaking about ourselves being the next big logistics hub, right? But if we can't serve that kind of community with the kind of connectivity that they'll experience elsewhere, then we can't compete. So there are huge benefits. Does it outweigh the cost? And that's what this kind of dialogue and this kind of analysis has to determine.
Well, you brought some people together recently to talk about these things. Are you, where are you? Are you persuaded one way or the other?
Well, we're about brokering the dialogue. But the truth is, the event that we had was very instructive. I think that we've just scratched the surface. As Stephen and Maria said, we need to keep pushing this dialogue and getting all the key stakeholders participating, the regulators, the environmental experts, and the technologists, and the business school for that matter. Yeah. So I think we're early in the narrative, but it's not a topic that we can leave alone and say, well, this is not for Jamaica.
But you want to see more business applications, not so much the consumer.
That has to be what drives it. I mean, there's big consumer interest because 5G is sexy, right? And, I can now watch movies in 0.5 seconds rather than wait for 3 minutes for it to download. But that is not what should drive.
What should drive it?
Not at all.
5G.
But some of the business applications, people are predicting the factories operating themselves. We don't have people anymore. People losing jobs. Those are real concerns.
They're great concerns, but the fact is, it allows us an opportunity to really look at the labor pool and then see how best we can create a path to upskill them. Because with 5G, it will create new jobs. Yeah, some of the older jobs in terms of the manual stuff, but you're going to need the brain power in order to make sure that, for instance, that this crane goes here in terms of to unload this ship, etc., all that stuff. You're going to need that kind of programming power. So it will set us on a path that we have to also embrace new technologies, new areas of study in order to take advantage of the technology.
The market will fix itself. And I do believe there's so much to gain with education, health, all those key factors that our community needs in place, and we in Kingston and in urban areas take for granted.
So 5G has started rolling out in some countries. How far away are we?
Well,
I'd say we have to wait and see. Yes. I think there's interest all across the region. The fact is, ourselves and Mary, we have to talk about what spectrum will look like in terms of from a cost perspective, because we know it's a country's asset and we know it has value. But when you look at Vision 2030 and you look out at trying to get ubiquitous internet connectivity right across the country, those imperatives are stronger imperatives from the actual worth of the actual spectrum itself. So we have to have a balancing act, and the conversation has to continue.
I think one of the interesting questions, Oliver, Stephen, is can 5G deployment be selective? So instead of looking at sort of universal coverage island-wide, can we look at specific pockets, again, like the port or New Kingston, and deploy 5G selectively to drive? I don't know. I think it's an important question to ask.
And that certainly is possible. I mean, because we're covered in fiber right across the country. So there are areas that we can roll this out too. But in those small pockets, just understand, you're going to have towers that are potentially 300, 400 meters apart. And you don't have that level of high rises where you can use building sites. It's not going to be a pretty site, And I know we treasure hospitality, and we don't want our country to look like that. But we have to try and find a measured balance between ensuring we can enable the technology and enable the development of our people, but at the same time holding true to the things that we hold and love and hold dear as our country and our environment.
Maria, we heard about smart cities again today when the ministers were talking about the Bernard Lodge development, smart city Portmore. Yes. How will 5G enable this?
Well, again, just what the conversation is all about, niche marketing, breaking it out in segments and working with the stakeholders, the building code, the regulators. All of us will have to sit around a table and determine that framework. How does 5G look framed in GOJ? and who will do what and who are the players. And again, pricing, of course, for feasibility, because we have to determine now how we're going to regulate, monitor, because now it is faster.
Yeah.
So again, monitoring change, it is a complete game changer.
And one of the most sensitive things is cybersecurity.
Absolutely.
Because when you get that kind of power in terms of speed, etc., there are the ill elements who want to do harm and also want to attack.
But Maurice, this sounds very expensive. Can we afford it?
Well, as I said, it comes down to the economics. The idea that you could maybe look at selective deployments in areas where there are high application opportunities, I think is something worth exploring.
But do you get the
don't
sense
know.
that the government will have to back it?
I think the government is going to have to make a decision one way or the other, a commitment, and it's over to the regulators on that. I think they're going to set that tone.
Right.
I say,
Yes.
yeah.
And
But
again,
let
it's
me put
early
this to
days.
Stephen. Can the telecoms do it on their own, or do you need the
I think
government?
there is a place for universal access, and in terms of funds like the Universal Service Fund, because there are places where it's going to be unprofitable to get to. Normally, like my cost to pass a home for fiber is like over $200. In some communities where the population density is so small, and you still want to get to them, it's going to cost somewhere in the region of $1,500 US to pass a particular home. So in these kind of applications, it would be good for universal access to come in.
Well, I
from
was
that
under the
perspective.
impression that it would be cheaper than running the cable.
It would be cheaper, but what I'm saying is that there is also that element that needs to come into the table in order to provide internet at the kind of cost that's affordable to Jamaicans. But you have to remember, when you're on bleeding edge type technologies like that, the pricing for the equipment, all these things are going to be much higher than what we have right now at LTE. So companies like ours will want a return on investment, and the fact is we can't price it at that kind of high rate that at a consumer, much less some businesses, will be able to afford.
So, Maria, what's the position as of now? What do we do? We wait?
The dialogue continues because, again, it's early days yet, and we have to sit around a table and decide the way forward. So collectively with ministry and all stakeholders, we'll have to sit down and work this out through. But it's not just one person at the table, it's all of us.
Yeah, and I
in this
think we have a forward-thinking minister in terms
Yes,
of
we
Favor
do.
Williams, and I know she is gung-ho on ensuring that Jamaica embraces new technologies and gets ourselves into the digital era. So I think it's something that the government will support, but we have to start the dialogue and start it quickly.
Yes.
Final word with Dr. McNaughton.
Well, you mentioned in passing just now smart cities, and maybe it's for another conversation, but let me say that that's an important concept, right? And we need to start looking at these initiatives that can empower communities as being dependent on having the high-tech infrastructure. Listen, we're doing a project down in Treasure Beach called the Smart Community Project. It's not powered by 5G. We'd love to talk to you about putting in connectivity there. But there are lots of other things that are human-centered that you can do to create smart communities. And Oliver, maybe we can come back another time and talk about those kinds of
That
initiatives.
sounds like an idea for another panel discussion. Thanks so much, Maurice, Stephen, and Maria, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Stay with us after this break. We'll have lifestyle and entertainment.